my advice for someone that already has something, that especially if you're non-technical, is to trust your gut in terms of, are you getting the value out of this team in this situation, or your developers if you already have a product. Trust your gut and get outside perspectives, because it's not that hard to go and get what you're doing audited by people, sometimes for free like us, or you pay for it. Is it worth paying $5,000 for an outside perspective? Absolutely. You button up a copy of your code in a zip file. It doesn't even have to be the living, breathing version in Git. Send it to someone, show them how you're managing tickets, and say, can you audit this and give me a gut check? Getting gut checks it doesn't happen that often, surprisingly. People feel stuck in their situation until they make a huge change, and then it's a risky, huge change. So let's get some outside perspective.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Keith Shields, the co-founder and CEO of Designli. That's designli.co. One of the sponsors of the Practical Founders Podcast, because they help non-technical founders to build great products and avoid all those common mistakes and messes and painful product problems that non-technical founders have when they're getting starting the companies and building the first product and then scaling up. They've helped build over 250 products for customers over the last 12 years, a team of 100 that becomes the full-time team for non-technical founders, vertical SaaS founders, and otherwise, as they get up and running. I've known hundreds of companies that have played this role for non-technical founders by building products, and Designli has overcome all of those major challenges that you run into when you do it wrong to get started. And they've been very successful, and they help founders get out of the mess when they run into problems with their current dev outsourced team, or that guy or whatever that got you started that isn't working so well. We talk about all the challenges and all the ways you can overcome it. So it's a wide-ranging discussion, and how AI is changing things in development and how it's not changing things as well. It's a great discussion with Keith. Hi, Keith. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me. Good to chat with you again.
Yeah, we've been chatting for a while about the classic problems of software development in the software entrepreneurship world, right? The first pain that founders realize when they're getting a software business up and ready. You've been doing this a long time. You're a very wise guy about this, and I look forward to hearing your insights about, you've helped founders build like 200 plus products out there, and you got a lot of lessons to share with founders about getting through the process.
Yeah, when I started, I had hair, so that goes to show how long I've been in the game. Right?
Yes, and you and your co-founder too.
Hair, yeah.
You're right. And are you both engineers?
Yeah, we both went to Ohio State, go Bucks, for mechanical engineering, and then pivoted into software. Halfway through that experience.
Okay. Excellent. Well, and you've been doing this a long time at Designli. Let's just start with what is Designli these days? It's not a product company. You're a service provider that helps, SaaS founders of all types out there.
Yeah, Designli helps non-technical founders build great digital products by becoming their complete outsourced engineering department.
Okay, there's a lot there, and I appreciate the clarity, right? So you're a custom software development services shop that you help entrepreneurs build, you say digital products that include SaaS apps. Is that, what else is in that bucket?
Yes, digital
there?
Products, iPhone apps, Android apps, mobile responsive web apps, all that good stuff. The classic SaaS products folks that you talk to every day, they're all in that bucket.
Yeah, that's great. And I've known maybe 100 software development shops running around helping non-technical founders that say, I see a problem in my industry, in my function in a company, or a B2C kind of thing in the world, with consumers. And they have the entrepreneurial seizure, as Michael Gerber used to call it, and say, I need to build an app. And then they find a guy or the team somewhere in the world, and you're helping out in there. Most of the 100, almost all, the service providers that I knew that help entrepreneurs build apps are not around anymore. It's a very
Yeah.
difficult business,
Yeah.
right? And you guys have figured something out. You've been doing it for 12 years. What is the difference between what you and your co-founder Josh and your team have been doing to be successful at this gnarly problem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's thousands of custom software services companies, like you mentioned, and a lot of them are kind of fly-by-night companies. I think the reason for that is it's really easy to hang a shingle and say, "Oh, I know how to code. I'll go ahead and do that as a
Yeah.
service for others." And so there's a lot of service
Yeah.
providers, and it's pretty easy to get going. Right, it requires no capital. You just meet someone that asks for software code, and you say, "Sure, I'll do it for you." But on the flip side of that, like you mentioned, if you've ever spoken with someone who's paid a company to build custom software, you know that there's
Yes.
some major horror stories. There's more horror stories than success stories, I would say. And so that's kind of been, we experienced that as paying customers. I can get into that if you'd like. And that's kind of caused our obsession over making the non-technical founder's journey less painful. We want to do this process with an eye for a very clear mission, which is making the client experience enjoyable along the way. We want to deliver peace of mind.
What? This is a painful thing. So I've interviewed 170 founders on the podcast to know, let's say, thousands more.
Yep.
And it's part of the story, which is the technical founders get build quickly, and you could say they may have fewer hurdles than the non-technical founders on the product side, but eventually they get to the go-to-market side and then they hit the wall. But for every non-technical founder, it's part of the story. So when did you hit the wall with your first product that you thought it was, and your first team that you thought it was, and your first guess of what it was, and how did you recover from that if they keep going up the hill?
Well, it ties in nicely. I was an engineer, so I mentioned my business partner and I were at Ohio State doing the mechanical engineering thing. And when you're sophomores in mechanical engineering school, they start to push you into internships, right? So we start looking at what does an internship for mechanical engineering look like, and you pick that path because you think you can design airplanes and stuff, and you're super excited about that.
Build stuff,
but really you're working on something very specific like a bolt and doing like CAD analysis for 6 months on that. So it's not nearly as sexy as you think. And so we were looking around for something to do in the summer that our moms would approve of, right? That was not a boring internship. And this was 2012. So this is right when Instagram sold to Facebook for $1 billion with no revenue, right?
Mobile and SaaS were finally
apps
real
were
and
cooking.
booming.
Yeah. So we didn't necessarily have any ideas for the next big consumer-facing app ourselves, but we came up with this idea for applets.com. So Applets was our first startup. And the idea was folks like you, Greg, could come on and submit a little napkin sketch of what you want the next big app to be. Vote on your favorites, kind of Reddit style, right? There was the upvote, downvote button next to it.
Yeah. Fun.
And the idea was we were going to go and build the highest voted app idea at the end of each month. And split the profits with everyone that helps. If it was your idea, you might get a future royalty. If you help name it, you get a future royalty, et cetera. And the idea there, kind of a classic, college kid startup idea, right? It's not the most, business model sound venture.
Yeah, we don't have any ideas, and we, don't have much money. So what do we do here?
But the idea was rooted in a little bit of reality, which is at the time, if you could get 20,000 downloads on your new app that hit the App Store, you could get blasted up in the charts and get organic downloads, the top 100, right? And so anyway, we luckily had a decent network just from childhood, so we raised a small friends, family, fools, a couple angel investors kind of round for this thing, and successfully built this custom web app with an outsourced team that was this applets.com voting platform. And we had some investment capital left over. And the idea was we were going to pay established agencies to build the winning apps for us. Because my business partner and I,
your first mistake.
Yeah,
that's right.
We had done some coding in the past, but nothing too crazy, right? Just kind of some light stuff.
Yeah.
And so again, building the community was successful. We had around 16,000 users like submitting app ideas and stuff. But what turned out to be shockingly hard was getting those winning app ideas built with paying money to agencies. And we tried agencies in Latin America and Eastern Europe and New York City for $500 an hour, right? So it was all over the world. We tried different kind of, companies, services companies. And man, we just found the same exact problems over and over again. And it seems kind of simplistic, but it was kind of a breakthrough moment where it was a black box, right? You have no idea what the company's doing, and there's no proactive communication.
The dev company, you have no idea what they're doing. Yeah, I hear that Every time.
Black
Yeah,
box
right.
effect. When you finally get something out the other side, it's buggy and horrible. It's not to your vision, right? You had to wait 6 months for that. And it's like, really? That's what you were doing all along? No proactive communication, right? And so we kind of,
Oh, gosh. I mean, stop me when, like,
oh,
these are
yeah.
classic
Yes.
problems, right? And they're so painful for
Exactly, they are.
founders.
So yeah, to put a
Um,
bow on that, we tried to we ran that company for about 3 years, trying to build one app per month, and we certainly did not launch 36 apps. We launched, I think it was 16 total. So only 16 made it
yeah.
through the process, and then of those 16, probably like 1 or 2 was actually to our vision of what we were hoping for when we put it into the agency as an input. So that kind
Yeah.
of caused our obsession on, man, building an agency that makes the founder's journey less painful, where you proactively communicate and you have respect. You don't talk down on the non-technical customer, and you're proactive, and you make it not a black box because you're treating them
Magic.
like a partner that's involved in the process every single week, right? These became our kind of founding ideas that we wanted to solve for.
And so you, let's say, changed from the applets
Yeah,
to Designli to be the kind of, let's say, custom dev shop partner
right.
that you guys know will work and you
That we
guys
wish we
dreamed
could have
of.
found. Exactly.
Right. And what were let's say, the founding principles? I'm sure it's evolved since then, but what were the things that Designli does today that were there in the beginning, part of that epiphany?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of again, it sounds very basic, but it's no different than if you, Greg, were to hire a plumber to come to your house and solve some stuff. Like, what do you want in that person? You want them to call you back right away? You want them to be very communicative? You want them to explain what they're doing before and during and take pictures and after? You would love a customer success person to call you the next day and say, "How was your experience?" before you get the fat invoice, right? And so these are
Yeah.
all kind of basic service company principles that,
Yeah. Laws
yeah,
of nature.
these are
Yeah.
not applied to technical ventures, especially run by developers.
Ah,
Developers typically don't like to communicate. No offense, developers, but
right.
we need some kind of customer care layered on top, and then that has always been the focus. And man, it's done wonders, right? You look at what folks are saying about the service, and the communication. That word is plastered everywhere.
Right. So, and how many people on your team now?
We've got 94 employees total today.
So they're employees. They're not
They're all full
contractors.
timers.
These are
Yeah.
full-time employees. And you have let's say, a clear approach to engaging, starting,
Yeah.
going forward that founders need to understand. There's a little
Yeah.
discipline in there and structure, that they need to understand as well. You said full-time teams, right? Multidisciplinary teams. It's not just, we've got a guy
Right.
for you. And it's not, you've got an idea, here's a back-end engineer
Right.
who doesn't know how to talk to. So tell us about what your core offering is for a SaaS founder. Either they're thinking about building an app, or they built an app and they realize they need to change partners and
Yeah.
reset and get going.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of the principles of running the business outside of just, clear communication and kind of the customer experience side, the things we focus on are full-time focus. This is something we learned a lot 12 years ago against today. The journey has definitely been a journey. But we've learned that developers and any creative work, really, you do your best work when you're in there full time and you're doing the shower thoughts at the end of the day, and you're like, "Oh, Greg asked for that feature. That's
Yeah.
how I should build it." Right? You get the breakthrough. So we
Yeah.
assign developers full time to the customer's initiative, and then multidisciplinary teams is another thing we care a lot about, which is it takes more than just a developer or 2 or 3 to build great software. So we have this Venn diagram on our website that talks about design as a component. So all of our product teams include design, and then business, that's the product owner and the quality assurance analyst. So this is a team of 5, 6 folks. Again, the developers are full-time, the rest can be fractional, but that is your
Okay.
multidisciplinary approach to building great stuff.
So on this team, do you have designers? You say, I've got this
Yeah,
idea, and then somebody goes to, here's exactly what it should look like before it hits an
precisely.
engineer. Maybe it's a prototype that goes, for validation. We'll talk
Yeah,
about all of that. You've got the engineers front and back end to
yeah.
build it. And is there a project manager slash product manager slash product
Yes.
owner that is the responsible party to make sure that it is what we said it was going to be, and it's on time, and we're
Exactly.
making
Yep. The
progress?
product owner is
Yeah.
assigned as well, and they're assigned in our business. They're assigned 50% per customer, so 20 hours a week
Okay.
for your product. So each of our POs only has 2 customers they deal with. Yep.
Okay. And it's evolved a little bit in the last 30 years of the software business, but what is the role of QA? Do you have separate quality assurance folks that do the
Mhm.
double check and test what the engineers built, or do you include that in the engineering approach with automation and the
Yeah, all this
discipline there?
stuff, the software development world is changing quick with AI and, the consolidation of roles. Everyone's talking about this, but yes, right now we've got separate QA folks who
Okay.
all tickets are accompanied with acceptance criteria. They're responsible for walking through that checklist before the customer sees it. And again, when you treat the customer as a partner, you show them not just hey, here's your version 2 build, go ahead and test. It's here's what the version 2 build, here's what it includes, here's all of the test cases that we ran through, all 200 rows of this spreadsheet with the yes, it
Yeah.
passed. And you
Yeah.
just kind of expose that process to the founder. And that makes founders a little bit more technical along the way, right? You're kind of educating and
Yes.
including them as you go. Yep.
Again, not rocket science, but very rare and really hard, which is clarity of the what we're going to
Yeah.
build, communication, right, and constant communication, and when somebody says, "We said we're going to build this feature, we built it on time, and we double tested it here to these scenarios," like that almost never happens. First of all, on time, but second of all, and we
Right.
tested it, right? The founders, it's usually the facepalm when they say, "That's not what I
Yep.
wanted. It's late. It's crappy." That's from that's blaming, let's say, the product side of things. And then the engineer says, "And I have 3 more ideas that would make this better
Right.
now that I see it." There's probably a discipline around that as well. How do you solve that one, right?
Yeah.
Which is, founders have big appetites, big visions, and focused clarity on what to build next and what exactly it is a surprise to a lot of founders, and keeping them focused, not adding and changing and too much, right? I
Totally.
don't know. How do you how do you help them see that that's one of the keys to efficient,
Yeah, well, I
great
think
products?
you're speaking to something interesting, which is our the inroads for when we meet customers. There's kind of
Okay.
3 different scenarios that the founder is in or when they come to us. The first one is
Right.
starting from scratch, right? So when you're starting from scratch as a non-technical founder, getting clarity on what you're trying to do and why it's important and what the
Oh
success
my
metrics
gosh.
are is priority 1.0. So we follow agile software development as does everybody. So this is not a differentiator.
Yes,
But
right.
we call it agile with guardrails because before we dive into 2-week sprints and get pretty technical with coding, we really need to make sure that the non-technical founder and their product team, us, are really aligned with what that first launch point is. And this is not saying we're fixed scope, fixed fee, like this is never going to change. This is just
Yeah.
getting a very clear stamp of, yeah, if we get to this point, I will be a happy non-technical founder, right?
Yes.
And so when we
Well, that's a chore. That's
yeah,
really hard because they're new to software. They're new to this
exactly.
game, and software is very different than building, a car or a
Indeed.
hamburger, right? That is kind of fixed
Exactly.
and not too tricky. People have a lot of misconceptions about what it takes to make software. I have this idea for software in my
Yep.
industry, and they wave their hands at the whiteboard, and then it's way different than that to build something that works for a
Exactly.
customer,
Exactly.
right? Through the
Yeah.
process.
So how we give that structural clarity and the kind of sign offable thing to customers when they're starting from scratch
Uh-huh.
is we have this intro offer that we call the Solution Lab. It's a 2-week design sprint. So we essentially give the customer a taste of that multidisciplinary team, that Venn diagram of skill sets,
Right.
design, engineering, and
Yeah.
business, where we're going to assign our lead designer full time for 2 weeks, one of our product owners half time for 2 weeks, and one of our lead developers half time for 2 weeks. And what this kind of 160-hour total blast in 2 weeks is able to accomplish is a navigable, clickable simulation in Figma of what version 1 looks like with all the kind of user flows and it's clickable, tappable, plus a development plan with each feature defined and sized, estimated, and put into a timeline, a roadmap of what to expect in terms of price points and timelines to get there.
This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Designli. If you're a non-technical founder with an up-and-running SaaS business, but your first product and dev partner aren't keeping up, it's time to check out Designli. Designli understands the pains you're experiencing right now. Dev leaders who speak in jargon and put you off, MVPs that went live and face technical problems and UX issues, and missed expectations all around. Designli's mission is to help non-technical software founders build great products with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind by serving as your fully outsourced engineering team. Designli becomes your trusted product partner, working with you every week as your dedicated team. They have partnered with over 200 non-technical and practical founders in the last 12 years. Designli knows how to turn that crazy product stress into calm and successful software launches. Check out their success stories from founders like you who've been there. It all starts with the free one-week audit, where they review your product's code, design, and roadmap to uncover what's working, what's broken, and what's next. Check out designli.co/practical. That's designli.co/practical to talk to them and see how they can help you move faster and sleep better. So you're talking to a founder and they go to your website and all this is explained at your website and success stories and everything else. And they say, that's what I need. And that's your, for a first build, MVP, prototype, version 1, all of that. That's your first engagement, is to get to some clarity. I mean, you charge for that, presumably, with 160 hours. And there's a lot of learning there, probably more learning. Your team learns what exactly is going on here. And the founder learns, oh, here's how I need to be specific enough that I can build it and I can see it, right? So there's not like a vague kind of thing. So can you really get through clickable clarity in 2 weeks with a founder who hasn't done this before?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we do solution labs all the time. We do about one a week is the current cadence. And it's kind of eye-opening to founders when they see what a full-time assignment can unlock for them, right? Because most of the time when you hire anyone on the internet, it's like, oh, I'll give you 10 hours. It's a 10-hour bucket, and you're going to ping pong between 20 customers. So when you have that designer full-time for 2 weeks, we can really blast out some good volume. But the solution lab, selfishly for me, is also a kind of focuser of who's a customer that I'm willing to get married to for the next year or 5, right? And so we also, very much on purpose, attach a money back guarantee to it, where if the founder goes through that 2-week process and doesn't love it, it's not a 5 out of 5 slam dunk, then we'll just ship their money back. We're not going to, continue forward. And that's good. Kind of, they get to know us, we get to know them, and make sure their ideas are something that's truly buildable. Because that's a problem more and more with, some AI dreaming and stuff these days. So,
yeah. So you're ICP, which you've been doing this a long time, and you're successful with, which means you have an ideal customer profile, somebody that not just you could sell, but somebody that you want to be a partner with for a long time and create success for them and their customers and your team and so forth. So it's not just a non-technical founder who wants a team to build an app. It's one that, let's say, gets it enough that you guys can be successful. So for your filter to be successful and keep going after all these years, do it hundreds of times, what is the difference between a founder that doesn't get it and one that does get it? They're able to say, well, there's 100 things we could do, but we're going to start with these 3. Is that the simple answer, or what else is in your ICP?
I mean, the first one is that the obvious stuff, which is they don't think that it'll take 1 month and $1,000 to make the next Salesforce.com, right? So that's the pretty big first one, and from there, I think the biggest thing is being willing to being willing to partner with the agency or the folks you're working with, the technical builders, as a kind of product partner, and not treat my feature ideas are perfect and should not be changed ever, right? Instead, it's collaborative. It's, we're going to come into the solution lab and help think through the minimum viable product version of each of the features. How does the feature start skinny with maybe a manual back end and all the stuff that I'm sure you know of.
Right.
And if they're not willing to think like that, then sure, they might sign up for a 2-year plan before anything gets launched, but there's a lot of room for blow-ups in a 2-year plan. So we really want to make sure that first kind of launch point is as early as possible. And if you can kind of tell if someone's willing to think in that way. in 2 weeks.
Yes. And I think it's part of the practical founder revolution. In the old days, you needed funding to get a stack of engineers to go
Yep.
build the software and get the servers and all that. I'm talking 20 years ago. But making software has gotten easier with cloud technologies and so forth. But that doesn't solve the whole problem. You actually, the ones that win and do it efficiently without VC funding and create valuable companies are able to do that. We could build 100 things, but we're going to
Right.
start here. The most valuable thing that isn't too wrong, right? Isn't the wrong feature,
Yep.
and they can validate it. And they don't waste a lot of money along the way. And they get happy customers, and development works to get more happy customers, and then development works to. So there's a lot of ways to waste money by working on the wrong things,
Indeed.
right? It's not just coding faster, which is getting better, faster, stronger with AI, but that kind of decision process. Do you offer therapy on that, or that's really just part of your solution lab demo to say, oh, that's what I need to do? There's 100 things I could think of, but the ones that my first customers would pay for are this, and we're going to start skinny.
Yeah,
as you said.
that's baked into the pie of how we do about 5 workshops, about 10 hours of customer commitment over the 2-week thing, right? We're kind of giving them some therapy or
Okay.
some education or some kind of workshopping along the way to try to get them to think like that. And then our product owners are really the ones that are a very important part of the team. That's why they're 20 hours a week per customer to try to continue to do that as we go through 2-week sprints. And like we're flexible to change things and not adhere to the
Yeah,
plan as you
sure.
do in Agile, but making sure the customer understands
Yeah.
the implications of, oh, you want this to
Yeah.
be absolutely perfect and flawless and a very robust feature before your friends and family launch. Oh, maybe we try to get this thing out the door sooner because of these reasons, right? And trying to that
Yeah.
education part doesn't stop. It's a big
Yeah.
part of the business.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what happens in this process? Is it discussions to a clickable prototype that isn't coded yet to first version MVP that works,
Mhm.
as scalable software? It's not version 1 yet, where it's pretty clear and
Yeah.
solid or something like that. But like, how do you think about the
Well, it's a
progression
good question, right?
in your
It's a good
development
question.
process?
There's a
Yeah.
reason we haven't jumped to like vibe coding stuff for non-technical customers
Yeah.
and MVPs or their like first validation point. So it begs the question of when does Designli's process where you're doing Figma and you're doing a 4 to 6 month development push to get the first launch out, like when does that fit in for
Yeah.
someone starting from scratch? And that's a good
Right.
question. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of AI, huge fan of Lovable, huge fan of all this stuff
Yeah.
in terms of getting that first validation. So a lot of our customers now are getting the first set of, hey, I am building a tool for pool management companies, and I got 50
Yeah.
pool management companies that saw my Lovable thing, and it's a front end only, but man, you can really click through it and like pretend you're signing up, and you see a
Right. Uh-huh.
dashboard,
Yeah. I hear that a
and
lot.
and
That's
they
right.
want
Yeah.
it, and they're willing to pay $1,000 a month for it. Like that's amazing. And then we go into that Lovable code, and we're like trying to educate. It's, hey, 200,000 lines of code are in one single file in the back end, and here's why that's not the best way to build a scalable software. And oh, your passwords are exposed in plain text in the database. Like this is why this is not a scalable foundation for actually charging
Right.
people for this.
Okay.
So, but you can get
It's a reasonable validation tool,
totally
I would say,
and
for founders. It's
exactly.
really exciting.
So really, we're
Right.
just
Yeah.
trying to. A lot of the times we need to come in as the folks that tell you not to start building a business charging a bunch around these features yet, and replace that
Okay.
with something that trained developers that have done this for a long time are blessing all of the code that goes into the code base for that first launch is actually charged for. And that's where Figma line up for those developers. They can chop it up into code and get it launched. That's where that starting from scratch path that we come in really shines.
Yeah, it's a surprise to most non-technical founders where they say, "Well, there's a feature and it looks
Mhm.
good," and then they don't realize, like, let's say, infrastructure or the
Right.
foundations, security, a little scalability. We're not building this for infinite
Right.
scalability. User management, all that
Yes.
plumbing stuff. Used to be hard. Let's say it's a little easier, but it needs to be thought about, right? Adding users and signing people up and including charging for it and all that stuff that needs to be
Yep.
added as well. The stuff you don't see.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So how many companies do you work with a year with Solution Lab? You say about 50 of them. And how many of them say, oh, this is awesome. I like the way you work. I can work that way. Let's get going. How many entrepreneurs, non-technical founders, do you help build products every year?
The metric we have for folks converting from solution lab to a development team is about 36%. So 36% of folks that
Yeah, okay.
want to move to
Yeah,
building or have enough funding to get to the early
that sounds
stage
about right.
of launch. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then so that first team, right? Let's
Yep.
go, let's do this thing. This is another expectation thing for founders. They think some guy on Upwork,
Right.
Pakistan, $1,000 a month, let's get going. Well, but, or they get big agencies that have overthought it and, they get big estimates, 500,000, million or whatever. Like, what is the first team size scope for, getting started? What does that look like in cost?
Yeah. The solution lab is helpful because it allows us to not be one size fits all, right? Maybe there's
There
a
you go.
case
Right.
where
Okay. Uh-huh.
a single full stack engineer supported by a tech lead, which is our kind
Yeah.
of management structure. They also directly contribute features, half time per customer, and then a
Yep.
product owner. Maybe that's a lean team that can get that customer
Yes.
what they need, and that's $15,000 a month in terms of investment for the team
Okay.
to bring them to the future. Um,
Yeah, and it always
yeah,
depends. So, what you need
yep.
and what's really in the scope and, what's
And
going on
before we
there.
move
So,
on,
yeah.
the probably the more typical outcome is you need still some segregation of roles and responsibilities and what you're trained at doing. So a typical team for Designli has a full-time front-end developer, full-time back-end developer, half-time tech lead. Again, these are the managers of the developers. So they're doing performance reviews, merging all the stuff into the code base, right? And also directly contributing features. So they are billed to the customer as part of the team. Product owner, half-time, graphic designer, 25%, 10 hours a week, quality assurance, half-time. So that
Yeah.
right there is a 6-person team, and
Yeah.
that's normally $30,000 to $33,000 per month. That would be a common team size for us. And then
Okay.
it's a matter of in the solution lab setting the expectation for it'll be 4 months to get you what you need, or 6 or 8 or et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's, let's say, the
Yep.
capacity, you can scope and depending on time,
Right.
how long it's gonna take you to get there,
Yep.
generally speaking, which is the modern, skinny, agile approach and very efficient. So another part of your formula is not like, "Hey, we're gonna put one guy and they kinda do it all," which, let's say that's a clear
Right.
myth, right? There isn't a product owner that can code or a coder that likes to spend time with QA and design. And, there's a few of those. And some of them were the founders in the first place that
Right.
did just enough of everything to get the thing up and running. And then they got their team, right, with the
Yep.
specialists. Is that a surprise to some founders that, there's some actual important specialist roles on
Yeah,
the
I
team?
think it takes folks a while to realize that, which is why many non-technical founders, when they try this for the first time, they go to Upwork and they find the single guy who says, I develop apps, and they throw him some money, and inevitably it doesn't work out that well, right? And so they come to us after that point. And that's
Yeah.
honestly our best, if I'm to be honest, I think that's our
Yeah.
best type of
Right.
customer because they've gotten their expectations
Now
realigned,
they
right?
know.
So that brings me to the second
Right.
path of when we meet people, which is
Mhm.
recovering from a bad experience, right? That is a very common type of non-technical ICP.
Let's just repeat some of these
Yeah.
bad experiences. You hear this all the time. I've heard it for years. I hear it every week with early stage founders that I work with in my peer groups. Can we just make a list of the 10 things, the 10 pains that they like? Here's one. I have a fractional team and I have no idea what they're doing. Everything takes a long time. They say they're going to do this and I get
Yep.
50% of it. It's not what we talked about. I don't get any communication from them. They're not focused on me. I have to re-explain
Oh yeah.
myself over and over again. I think I wasted a year and a half. My customer quality issues, customers are complaining about it, and I can't get them fixed. What else is in that list? Come on, this is excruciating. Every founder can recognize a part
Yeah, I
of
feel
this.
like you've been around the industry for quite some time. It sounds like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but what else is in there? Like your classic, you
Yeah.
know, classic founder
Yeah, I think
kind of
you've
things.
hit on some of the main ones, right? I'm not getting the velocity. It's taking too long. I never have clear estimates that I can plan around in terms of timeline, let alone dollars to, get something to my
Yeah.
users. Things aren't designed and approved before the developer starts. The developers are inventing the look and feel as they go, and inevitably the beautiful
Ugh.
designs I had start to degrade because devs don't have the design skill and they're just kind of slapping stuff in there.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, that there's a lot of stuff, and I think non-technical founders we have to give them a little bit more credit in that they are able to pick up their intuition, their hunch. Like
Yes.
it doesn't seem like it should take this long to build the login page, or like that's a simplistic example,
Yes.
but they pick up on things that don't feel right in the gut, and oftentimes that is indeed the case. And so, what we want to do for those people is offer some assistance. And so, what we do when folks are trying to recover from a bad build or a bad experience, just feel like in their gut something's not right, is we do this 1 week no cost audit where we want to audit the 3 components again of that Venn diagram we talked so much about. So we'll audit the code base, of course. We'll get access to it, see if it's structured well, see kind of if it's following industry best practices, it commented well, et cetera. We'll get access to their design system in Figma or wherever it lives to see if things are being teed up with visuals and approved before they get shipped off to devs, what the process is there. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is we'll get access to the project management system, their Jira, whatever they're using to the other company or other freelancers using to manage the development tickets, and see what that methodology is like. And when you get insight, you get a window into those 3 pieces of how the other team is running the process for that founder, we can really easily say, oh, ding, there's your issue. Or here's a combination of issues or things that could be done better to get more clarity or more regular releases or whatever your main problem statement is. And so we call that the impact week. And sometimes folks move on to a takeover from there. Other times they use it as a, bring it to that other company and say, please do these 10 things differently, and give them another chance, which is also more than fine. Yeah.
One of the hunches of non-technical founders, and a lot of time it is right, is I hired this team, this agency. Like in all agencies, they're doing multiple things for multiple people. I get fractional everything. I don't think they're working on my project very much. Or that engineer, I think he's got 10 projects and he says he's full-time, but he's not. Can you validate if the engineers are working?
Yeah, well, that's a common problem. Very common problem. And most companies don't do full-time assignments. And to be fair, Designli didn't for many years as well, right? We evolved our business. We started fixed fee, then we did time and materials, trying to learn how to best do software development, right?
I know.
And we're like, okay, we're doing a bucket of hours and rotating developers here and there. And only in the last handful of years have we solidified this full-time discipline thing. And so really the entire business just is around how do you build trust with the non-technical founder? How do you prove to them that Designli's got their best interest at heart, the best interest in mind? And so for things like, is my team actually working on this? How do you get them to trust you when you say that the developers are full-time? Well, every single week, if you want to be in daily stand-ups, you can, but most customers want to be on sprint planning, sprint review, retro, do it again, right? Every single one of those times for the entire year or 5 that you're working with us, you're talking to the same folks. They're always there. They're involved in all communication. Each person, you're seeing exactly what their tasks are and what they accomplished. And you're seeing them in the project management tool, Basecamp and Jira, right, as they're working on features. And they become your team. They're on call, ready to take your phone call, right?
And in Slack, you're communicating with them.
It's very obvious when you're kind of doing that alongside the client as a partner, instead of hiding behind an account manager who's like, I promise we're working hard. And they're trying to, smooth it over, even though the people are reassigned, right? You're in direct contact with the entire pod when you're working with Designli. Yeah.
Right. Are they able to communicate directly?
Yeah.
An engineer asks a question and the founder can answer it, and that normal thing. Like if everybody were in the same room, which makes founders feel more comfortable, right? People really understand their context and the scope and everything else, and they get better and better at things. And those little nudges, that need, is it this or this? We ran into this. Is it this or this? Oh, shoot, I talked to a customer. They really want this thing. Can we adjust the plan? All those flexible, not infinitely flexible, but like minor flexibilities, right, require more constant communication.
Exactly. Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. And so what happens in this weekly meeting? Founder and co-founder talking to your product owner. And who else is on that call? And what do you guys talk
Yeah,
about?
so all calls include the entire team. So again,
Oh,
the
great. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
avoiding
Okay.
communication silos, right? So the typical kind of rituals in agile software development are what we follow. So Monday is sprint planning. You see everyone on your team and what they're committing to, and they're committing to it live in terms of understanding the customer's priorities and saying, here's
That
what I
week
commit to deliver in this 2-week increment.
too.
Following Friday, we demo the 2-week increment. Everyone's there. The QA showing the features and what the test cases were, and that it all passed. Developers are answering questions about the features they built. Right, go figure. We also have a monthly
Yeah.
strategy review where we look at the forward-facing timeline and prioritization so that we can get more than just 2 weeks out in the future of like, where do we want this thing to go, right? And this speaks to something that we like a lot, which is hypothesis-driven development, which is how do you intelligently
Ah,
scale what you've built into the future instead of just going with your gut every 2 weeks of like, oh, I think users want this and this, right? You're kind of doing the, what's the wind direction when I'm taking my golf swing kind of thing. Rather, you can
right.
be a little bit more scientific around what you do next and have a hypothesis, and then change the feature or add a feature, see how it goes. How does it impact the business metrics, and then evolve. So that monthly strategy session tries to slowly but surely ingrain that mentality into the customer, where we want to have more of a methodology around helping you grow your business. So yeah, those are
Yeah.
basically the types of meetings that we have. And of course, the team is available ad hoc to jump on whenever because they're your team, but those are
Yeah.
the ones that are in the calendar all the
Yeah.
time.
So the founder still has the responsibility to say, I got this vision and this kind of scope and the roadmap and everything. But they're right there saying, I got 2 weeks of
Mhm.
capacity, this full-time team here, that I got to figure out what is the most important thing to fit
Right.
in next. Right. And what you're saying is it's not just a gut feel and I like this or whatever. How do you help? This is really important. It's like this is fundamental. This is a superpower of ones who make
Right.
it through to the next side and do it efficiently without wasting a lot of money, going out of business, is have pretty good fidelity on what's the next thing, next most important
Yeah.
thing to build
Sure.
and in what size. How do you help them validate? Do you say, here's a prototype, go to your customers and decide if it's this or this? Or how do you help them get that habit?
Yeah. Yeah. So that word I dropped, hypothesis-driven development, we didn't invent that. That's a thing that's around, but
Yeah.
there's not that many services companies that do that or try to implement that for customers, mainly because most custom software shops, and us too sometimes, if we're being honest, right? You're kind of putting out fires, you're like doing what the customer asks, and you're kind of sprinting, and that's kind of the nature of
Yeah. Uh-huh.
software. But what our goal is to get customers to a more calm, confident state where it's not like you're
Okay.
running around with your hair on fire when you own a software business
Right.
as the customer. So we
Imagine
imagine
that,
that. Doesn't that
people.
sound great?
Yeah.
So what people need is a
Yeah.
framework, a more kind of confident way of working, which you can instill with a framework of how to think about the future of your software business. And so hypothesis
Mhm.
driven development is a great one of those, which is customers customers say, "Oh, Keith and team, I want this feature because I think it'll be cool." And we say, "Okay, cool. That does sound cool. How do you think that helps the business? Does it help, you know, more people sign up? Does it increase how much they're willing to pay? Does it, right? You kind of understand the business metric that it might impact. Then you make sure that that thing is actually measured, because oftentimes these things are not measured. Let's make sure there's a admin
Mhm.
panel or an analytics tool or something that's
To know if it worked when you did it,
exactly.
right, and
So
get better
let's
at it.
make sure
Yeah.
there's some sort of
Mhm.
tool that we're doing event logging and tracking that thing. And only when that's done do you go and build that feature. And to answer your question, we want to build the minimum implementation of that feature that starts with that designer on the team. It starts with the Figma prototype of, hey, this is what it could look like. Show it to customers. And then it's, what is the smallest implementation of that we can develop? Great, let's go ahead and do that. Let's make sure, again, all those events are tracked. And then you can have the product owner in that strategy session look back and say, all right, we did that feature, and that metric that we cared so much about got worse or it got better. And you can just
Yeah.
apply it's not complex, but it's not something that's thought of very much, which is applying the scientific method, hypothesis, and validate it or not, to software development.
Yeah. Once you get the product building firefight resolved here. We're back to the founder responsibility of
Mhm.
prioritizing with some fidelity that it's the right thing. And a lot of founders said, I had a lot of ideas, customers had a
Yep.
lot of ideas, but we only built the stuff they would pay for, right? And if like literally had that founder question saying, well, we could build that, but are you going to pay
Right.
for that? Could you pay us to develop it? Would you pay more for that? Or, you know, uh, was that really what you're going to sign up for? And then they could validate that,
Sure.
did it really work and so forth. So follow the money, you know, was one of the clues out there. And you said business impact. I totally hear that. After the, how long does a team, you know, once you get started from
Yeah.
scratch or like recovering from a bad project, how long does it take before the team is, you know, let's say clicking and things are settled down? You know, is it a few months, you know, and everybody's got the hang of it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, any if you ask any developer, they'd say we should start from scratch instead of take over because of X reason. Like developers love to
Yeah.
start from scratch. So you know that you get into the you get into the groove faster when you're starting from scratch because you're controlling all the variables. When you're recovering from a bad build, or we come in to help people scale what they
Yeah.
built, those other two inroads that we meet customers where they're at, we'd be lying to the customer if we said that on day one all of your bugs would be fixed and all of your headaches
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
gone, right? So
Yeah.
it does take, again, we start with that impact week, the no cost audit. Then we go into a variant of the solution lab, that starting from scratch piece, same kind of components, but focused on code
Uh-huh.
takeover. It takes 3 weeks instead of two. That is setting up your local development environments, you know, squashing some of the low hanging fruit, really making tweaks to the code to better understand how it works. That's how you kind of, you know, get in there with both hands and learn.
Yeah.
And after
Yeah.
that, move into the dedicated team with the rituals that we already described in terms of meeting cadence and whatever. So
Okay.
that kind of ramp up process is about a month, I would say, of what
Oh, okay.
feels what it feels unproductive for the founder because they're like, I'm not getting the next feature that I've been asking for, right? Because the new team has to understand what's going on and try to take the
Yes.
reins. So there
Right.
is that kind of like my feet are stuck in the mud feeling for a sec. Yeah.
When you say a month, it maybe seems like a long time, but every founder who's been through this is like, only a month. I've been dealing with this for
Yeah.
years, right? And I could get to the other side in a month,
Sure.
and feel better about the whole thing and, you know, be confident, calm.
Calm.
I heard the words
Yeah.
there, clear, and, I can trust what's going on. And, you I know I'm clear about the
Mhm.
budget. So if anybody's wasting money, it's me building the wrong
Right.
things, right? At some point. So something like that. Okay. Well, that's a takeover of a bad project, which I'm sure is the main thing, right? Because everybody's done
Yeah.
that, and then they say, "Oh crap, I need to fix this," and not restart, but keep going there. What was the third one? The engagement type, scaling up from there, like
Yeah, yeah. In general, yes. We're starting. We're either starting from scratch, we're recovering from a bad build with like stuff's on fire and I need assistance, or I'm trying to scale what I built more intelligently, and that's again that framework of the hypothesis driven development stuff that we help implement if we become your primary development team. So
so that's like,
yeah,
okay, now ongoing
yeah,
here. And we're talking about, let's say, real
yes,
cadence and efficiency, and
right,
scalability. It's at some point, the product that gets you to a million isn't usually the foundation of the product that gets you past
hmm
10 million, right? So is there more going on in the infrastructure and building for volume and speed and things like that, or the complexity as your app grows? What happens in that scale
certainly,
zone
yeah. So
that founders should
the
be aware of?
first part of that, of course, is what we've already talked about, which is the more kind of intelligent framework, hypothesis driven development to prioritize what you do next. But to answer your question, there's obviously a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes, like more scalable infrastructure, having future sprints pointed to tech debt reduction as part of the scope instead of just new feature development, having some discipline to actually trim some features instead of just add, right? So
Ah,
these things come
yeah.
as you are in that scaling what you've built phase.
Okay. And yes, and then you become the trusted partner for years and years. And like, what's the biggest team that one of your non-technical founder clients has grown up to and still going?
Yeah, the teams, especially in the world of AI right now, our teams are nice and lean, I would say. It's easy to generate code, but you have to have the discipline around knowing what to bring into your code base or not, right? And understand how it works that you can
Yeah.
inevitably go and debug it later on. Our teams start with 5, 6. They can blossom up to 14, 15 people for a big project.
Yeah.
And what I think
Yeah.
people like about working with Designli is you can kind of treat that team like an accordion where we can
Ah,
scale up a bunch of effort for a blast to go and launch a mobile app version of the features I have on my web app. And then when that initiative's done, 6 months in, we can go ahead and skinny it back down and preserve cash flow, right? That's the practical way to run a software business instead of
cash
adding
flow.
permanent
Yep.
heads for the rest of time. So yeah, we do that.
So, and we didn't talk about this before, but where are these team members that meet weekly, speak English?
Yep.
Where are
We're
your
a
people?
nearshore development company, so all of our folks are in Latin America. Got a lot of developers in El Salvador, Colombia, Argentina. The time zone aligned.
So they're remote teams,
Yep,
right?
time
Yeah.
zone aligned, working on Central
Yeah.
and Eastern time, yep.
Okay. And how do you find members of the team, these engineers? There's engineers in every country in the world, and most of them are the classic engineer thing. They are far away from customers and they want to rewrite everything.
Yep.
And, they're smart people and so forth. But what type of engineer are you looking for that can be successful at Designli? I mean, what's different about the folks that work at Designli?
So
Uh,
yeah, it's a
you
good
know,
question. Yeah, our we've got a great HR department. We've got 3 people full time that do recruiting
yeah,
and that. And then the folks that handle our interview process are our A players, right? And you might say, oh,
yeah,
why aren't your A players on a customer team? Well, we take our A players and remove them from customer teams so that they can be involved in interviews, especially when we're in the boom times of a lot of projects coming in, because you want to make sure that
yeah,
those
right.
values and the communication and they're verbalizing the Designli Kool-Aid to the new people coming in, to get
Uh-huh.
them to buy in to our worldview. And that's really how we do it. And of course we do like the technical trial projects and things that we have developers coming into. But really it's I'd say the onboarding process and doing that with our A players that
Uh,
they're shadowing as they come up to speed with how we want to treat customers.
yeah. And what percentage of the engineers, let's say, in Latin America or knock on your door and say, I want to join your company. What percentage of them really have this client-focused, modern, right, communicative approach? It's not all
Not
engineers, right, that will show
yeah.
up. I mean, and there's difference with front end and back end and so forth, but it's a minority of engineers that want to play
Yeah,
like
not
this.
that many. Not that many. So we're
Okay,
kind of we're
right,
kind of
yeah,
always, I don't know what the percentage is, but we're kind of always recruiting,
yeah,
and so that we can find, the needles in the haystacks, especially for roles like the product owner that all the things I mentioned, like
tricky.
the hypothesis-driven development and the clear kind of regular communication, treating the customer as a partner, those are all things that are hard to find in any area of the world. So we for roles like that, we're kind of always trying to find the next needle in the haystack.
Okay, that's great. Well, obviously the challenge there. We talked a little bit about AI. It's clearly coming into
Mhm.
software development, software testing, software prototyping, and some of the outsourced teams that people work with are not really that AI focused and
Yep.
kind of stubborn about it. We don't do that. What are you guys doing with AI now? And then we'll talk about AI first apps and other things like that aren't a shift
Yeah.
from SaaS, right, where things are moving. But
Yeah.
how
So
are you
we're
guys
we're
using
we're
AI?
big fans of AI. We all of our developers, for example, have GitHub Copilot licenses. So are writing code faster than ever. And again, I think writing code is not the problem here. The problem is being a
Yeah.
systems thinker, understanding what the code is, why you're writing the code, what the business impact of the code is, making sure you understand it so that you can debug it. And this is why
You can write bad
yeah,
code faster.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
and you blow up faster than ever. You expose problems in your thinking faster than ever. So I don't think AI is the golden bullet for not needing developers. But certainly
Yeah.
our engineering teams are probably. I think the trend is going to be shrinking, perhaps over time, and maybe some of these specialized
Yeah, they're
roles
more
become
with
a little
less.
bit more consolidated. Testing has had a big impact, of course, in
Yay.
QA and stuff. So, yep.
Yeah. So what about AI features in an app versus traditional SaaS
Yeah.
app, right? Are they designed the same way in Figma and clickable prototypes and then do you have, let's say, whole structures for managing, APIs with LLMs and all the new plumbing that comes in and what's different about AI features versus traditional SaaS mobile
Yeah,
features?
totally. Well, as you certainly know, all SaaS products are adding AI, and so we're very well equipped to do that. We've got a lot of team members that are really focused on AI implementations. I would say our education point for non-technical founders, at least the way AI works now in terms of the technology limitations, we're trying to get customers to think of AI not as this, splattered around your product just because it sounds sexy. Like what's the business outcome that we're trying to focus on? Like how is this actually making the user's experience more helpful? So a common place where AI is helpful, of course, is to take a bunch of user interfaces, you dig through a bunch of menus to find what you're looking for, and great, let's go ahead and expose those features to a chat bot, right? A common implementation of the user interface is ask the chatbot what you want to do, and things like this are good implementations of AI, but we have to understand that there's also some limitations, and that the workflows executing actions has to go to deterministic software that exists for that reason and is
Predictable.
compliant,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and can do it the same way every single time. It's not probabilistic, and
Yeah.
so these AI agents, for example, live on top of deterministic classic software systems. And so
Yes.
that's something that might change, right? There's a lot of kind of buzz in the AI community about your business workflows and your things like that existing on the agent layer, but we're not ready for
Yeah.
that quite yet in terms of executing actions over and over again.
Yeah. And the 45 founders I work with in my practical founders CEO peer groups, everybody's doing AI
Yes.
in their business and sales and marketing and in development, and AI features are starting to come through, AI apps starting to come through. And the ones that are succeeding are iterating and
Yeah.
prototyping and validating and doing small bites. And the ones where the AI feature actually works and customers love it and will pay more and stay longer and everything else, pay more for the addition, they follow this kind of process, which is start small and validate and
Absolutely.
watch and see and nudge and nudge, and AI is improving underneath
Yeah.
this iteration cycle. So it's very exciting
Yeah, and
to
we
see
can we
that.
can acknowledge that sometimes it fails, right? You go try and replace your customer service with a AI agent that your customers end up screaming because they can't talk to a human, right? These are things that can be unwound, and
Yeah,
so let's not kind of bet the whole farm on an
that's it,
implementation of
yeah.
something. Yeah,
Small bet is
exactly.
what we're
Yeah,
saying. That's right. Yeah. And when somebody says, okay, I've got an AI first thing, maybe there isn't even an interface, maybe I speak to it, something like that, a modern,
yeah.
not a traditional SaaS mobile database, front end, back end stack. Are you guys doing that kind of development as well in your kind of
Yeah,
framework?
yeah, and for projects like that, the solution lab oftentimes focuses more on kind of system integration diagrams instead of Figma prototypes, because the look and feel is the same, right?
Ah,
It's
yeah,
the chat interface. There's not much to go and prototype. So mainly it's around data flows and what systems are doing
yeah.
what the orchestration layer looks like. So yeah, that kind of stuff is pretty technical in nature, which is why I'd say it's a minority of starting from scratch stuff we're
Yes,
building,
of
because
course.
non-technical founders aren't
Yeah,
our ICP is not necessarily thinking like that right now, but certainly I
yeah.
expect that to increase over time.
So the kind of founders you're helping, is it mostly vertical software type solutions? I'm in an industry, I see a problem, I wanna make a software company, maybe I've prototyped something and kinda worked, I wanna go build something now. Or are you dealing with horizontal B2B, B2C? Like, where's most of the action in your business?
Yeah, classic services business where it's a little bit of everything, right? We take customers when they find us, and we think we can help them. So we do everything from social networks, for dog
Oh, okay,
dating
right,
apps,
yeah.
like that kind of stuff, not B2B at all.
Yeah, right.
All the way
Yeah,
to vertical stuff. That's my personal favorite type of customer, of course, which is you
yeah.
worked in the industry for a long time, you found a problem, you understand it intimately, so you're the subject matter expert, and we go and help you turn that into a business that's very scalable. Yeah, so that the types of projects vary wildly, but I would say that's a good one in terms of, but by percentage is the vertical stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome here, and I can tell you're energized about this. I mean, it's a great thing to build software that solves problems for real people
Yeah.
in the world and get things out in the universe and make things happen from nothing to something, and then a real business there as well. You're focused on the product
Mhm.
development side. You're not a full service, like, then it's back to go to market and finding customers and supporting them and, operating a company. You don't help on that side as well. But this is the software business. The product is the
Right.
thing, right?
It's a
It's the multiplier on everything else you do.
indeed.
And if you get it wrong and you're too slow and it's a problem, you're going to lose.
Indeed.
And it's really appreciate all the work you do for serious people solving problems in the world and doing it efficiently. Are most of the folks you work with, let's say, bootstrappers and, lightly funded, or is there a VC funded component
Yeah,
of
pretty much
this?
all of our customers are bootstrapped or friends and family or some light kind of, funding from someone they know in the business that also wants to, in my previous example, they own a pool servicing company. I think that's what I said an hour ago, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm
And
sure you have
they
all the
want to chip
examples. Yeah,
in. Yeah. So that it's that type of funding situation. Yep.
right. And it's those practical, unsexy, but like amazing, right? I've been in the pool industry for 20 years and I've used this
Right.
software and everything, and I've been stitching this together. And I know 100 people that have
Exactly.
this problem, and the current software doesn't solve it. And if we just did this, and AI is actually helping approach some of the old problems that weren't
Hmm.
solvable with simple software before. Very exciting, very classic practical founder
Absolutely.
story there. Well, I really appreciate it, Keith, sharing all your wisdom and your approach and what you guys do. And you're focused, and I appreciate that, and successful with what you do. What advice do you have for practical founders? Let's just say they know they've got a mess. They got started, they got some validation with customers, get revenue, but their product story is a mess for all the reasons we talked about. And the new ones should know that unless you do it right, you're gonna walk
Yep.
into the mess, right? It's taking too long. I don't trust them. I wasted a year. My vision isn't coming into reality. The business is struggling because of my product team. But like, what advice do you have for them most typically when you meet founders and talk to founders, you're out in the ecosystem? What advice do you have for them?
Good question. Yeah, from the starting from scratch people, I get asked probably 10 times a week, is my idea any good? And so my advice to that person is I couldn't tell you, because if I knew what startup is a good idea, I would be running Facebook, not Designli. So don't ask me. Don't ask a service provider, let
Right.
alone
Okay.
anyone that's not, running Facebook. So I think my advice to that type of person is to get feedback early and often. Vibe coding is great for that. For development, kind of thinking through the leanest implementation of your first build is extremely important for that, and get to revenue as quickly as possible, right? We get a lot of people that want to kind of bloat the features and make it absolutely perfect and solve every single problem
I've never heard
before you
that
put it
before.
in front
Yes.
of
Yeah.
anyone, let alone get your first dollar. So like velocity to your first dollar. How quick can you get your first dollar? That's the mission, and nothing else matters until you accomplish that mission. And then for people that already have something, I don't know. I think my advice for someone that already has something, that especially if you're non-technical, is to trust your gut in terms of, are you getting the value out of this team in this situation, or your developers if you already have a product.
Yeah.
Trust
Yeah.
your gut and get outside perspectives, because it's not that hard to go and get what you're doing audited by people, sometimes for free like us, but or you pay for it. And so is it worth
Right.
paying
Yeah.
$5,000 for an outside perspective? Absolutely. And it's pretty easy to button up your stuff, right? You button up a copy of your code in a zip file. It doesn't even have to be the living, breathing version in Git. Send it to someone, show them how you're managing tickets, and say, can you
Yeah.
audit this and give me a gut check? Getting gut checks is It doesn't happen that often, surprisingly. People feel stuck in their situation until they
Yeah.
make a huge change, and then it's a risky, huge change. So let's get some
So
outside
get some help.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it sounds pretty simple in all of
Everything I've
this, but
said is
of
very
course
simple.
it's very hard. This is the hard part of the
Yeah,
business, right? And the hard things are the simple
indeed.
things. Well, Keith, I appreciate all you guys do in Designli and the team and the rest of your team. Thank you for being one of the sponsors of Practical Founders. Very
My
useful
pleasure.
for the team, and you've helped a lot of founders that I know already, and really appreciate your support. Thanks for being on the Practical Founders
Thanks, Greg.
podcast.
Good chatting with you.
Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.